Hello and welcome to Beyond the Index, the brand new 6-part video series which serves as your strategic compass for navigating today's fast-moving B2B world. This series is powered by Dentsu B2B's 5th iteration and latest, the Superpowers Index. The Superpowers Index is the largest global study of B2B buying behaviour. We've spoken to over 16,000 B2B buyers and analysed over 35,000 brand experiences, so we can tell you exactly what you need to do to win. Beyond the Index takes a deeper dive into key experts and topics from our business and leaders across the industry. My name's Rob Gold, I'm the president of Dentsu B2B, and we believe that there has never been a better time to be in B2B marketing. However, it is an incredibly complicated and fast-moving world, and as we enter the period of the AI-powered buyer, it's critical that marketeers understand exactly how and why and where to leverage AI to give their B2B brands a winning edge. So today's topic is those who win the race to AI maturity will win. And I'm delighted to be joined by two of my friends and fantastic marketers, Alex and Neil.
Thanks, Rob. Hi everybody. I'm Neil Dowling. I am head of global marketing at Genpact. Genpact are a global leader in agentic and advanced technology solutions. Great to be here.
And I'm Alex. I'm the Innovation Director at Dentsu Lab here in London, and my role is to explore new technologies, understand what they mean for brands and businesses across the whole of our business.
So arguably, perfect guest for an episode about AI and innovation.
I hope so. We'll see you in the next 30 minutes.
Fingers crossed. Okay, guys, so look, this year's Superpowers Index focuses on what we're calling the AI-powered buyer. Transformations around us every day, and the opportunity to create new value and new working processes is massive. However, until now, understanding why buyers and how buyers are using AI in their buying journey hasn't really existed. But for the first time, we've really dug into this in the Superpowers Index this year about how buyers are leveraging AI to make the decisions and how it's driving most value. So with that in mind, perhaps it's no surprise that the vast majority of people are now using AI to buy their products and services. In fact, almost 80% of buyers are saying that throughout their purchase journey, they're actually using this actively to help make decisions. So Neil, with that sort of significant stat, does that surprise you? What do you see and what do you at Genpact feel is having the most impact?
Yeah, no, I don't think it surprises me actually. I think it does speak to how AI has kind of come into everybody's everyday life. So if you think about how we search or we shop or consume content, AI is now kind of integral to that. It's embedded within that. It's pretty invisible at points within that. So I think it making its way over to a B2B buying kind of cycle and the human beings that are involved in B2B buying is not necessarily a surprise. I think it does mean, as for marketing functions and for brands, is how do you then like incorporate that into everything that you do? Because I do think it is now reshaped pretty much how you should think about everything from a marketing standpoint. Like the most obvious one is probably how it's affected search. We talked about it before in terms of, AI platforms are now kind of circumventing your website, search traffic is dropping off. How do then people think about content and their discoverability and their search optimization from a generative AI platform kind of standpoint? So I think that's a really good example of how in the buying cycle now, the search kind of part of that, which is, which used to be the biggest sort of, area that you're trying to compete for, has completely changed. But then it does talk to everything else in terms of how does your marketing operating model think about that buyer journey? How do you think about the structure of your teams, the structure of your content strategy, where you show up?
Your agency relationships.
Agency relationships, yeah. So I think it just shows I think that statistic shows actually just the power of AI in everybody's life, and then also actually how you need to then think very differently about the marketing operating model.
Yeah, search is being transformed. I heard someone say the other day that would you start a brand and have a website? It's a very interesting, different dynamic now, I think. So, yeah. Hey, Alex, what do you think sort of the most significant opportunities are for brands to leverage AI in a buyer journey?
Well, the first bit is discoverability and search in terms of if people are using these platforms more, how do you actually find the products? You saw ChatGPT last night announced that they're partnering with Stripe around a commerce functionality. So everything can be done, the whole funnel can play out essentially in ChatGPT. So that's the first thing, but that is going to evolve very quickly. And I think a lot of brands are struggling to understand how to react to that change and the pace, which is understandable. I think as well, to the point you made around the web, I think that typically websites are a collection of assets, and a brand, B2B or B2C, will drop them onto a page and say, here you go, consumer, buyer, go navigate. I think we now live in a world where the front page of the internet is just the conversational box, right? And depending on what you need and when you need it, assets will be pulled in to serve your needs. So you look from a buyer perspective, like, or B2B perspective, I imagine you have websites that have hundreds of products. How can you have a kind of conversation that pulls those products into one feed? So it's going to impact every part of the buyer journey. But for me, the interesting things at the moment is the discoverability piece, and also how you build digital experiences that are relevant for now, but also future-proofed. And that's the challenge, right? Is that this is only going to increase at an exponential rate in terms of AI maturity. As a brand, how do you think about, if I invest in this now and launch it in a year's time, it could be redundant. And then that's a interesting role that I think we as agencies are starting to play more when working with brands.
I mean, that's interesting. Something about having a physical location or digital location to go and understand a brand, a collection of assets called a website. Yeah, that in some respects breeds a lot of trust and a bit of reassurance about the quality of that brand. You think if that doesn't exist, like in the future, how do you keep reassuring people around your brand's trusted, your brand's safe? It's quite a, we've discussed this, like the different conversations and decisions you need to make about how to build your brand in a sort of AI era, really.
I think how to build your brand, the way in which I see it is that anything mid-market isn't working, right? There's thinking fast and thinking slow. And the thinking fast is your Spotify, your Amazon, your, let's go. Thinking slow is the brands that people want to spend more time with. Anything mid-market, and we've seen this across retail the past 10 years, it just hasn't got a strong value proposition either way. So that's the brand's lens. And then how we interface with technologies evolving and changing, which is, you just look at that through WhatsApp voice notes or voice and these different things, right? There's a reason we're doing that. And I think consumers and people are changing. We all have choice paralysis. We all go into a restaurant and look at a menu and go, we all go on Netflix and go, God, I don't know what to watch today. So I think all these things are playing out to influence the types of AI-powered experiences that we can build in the future. And I think a lot of brands are looking at it very simply for a tech lens, but you think about it through a kind of human-centered design approach, which is a big part of what we think about in lab.
Yeah. Hey, look, at the Superbuzz Index this year, the brands that are winning that we've looked at are focusing very much on what we're calling sort of buyability. So how easy it is for someone to buy you, to comprehend your value proposition, to buy your products and service, to get other people to be reassured by the fact you're making that decision. So this whole theme of buyability is really important, particularly in a world where you've got to blend the old world, the new world, humanity, creativity, all those things together along with AI. And Neil, I mean, does that resonate? Like within Genpact, what's the experience of sort of buyability? Are you focusing on those kind of areas, the customer? What do you think, what's going on?
Yeah, I think that's a good example of where like buyability is a fundamental part of marketing or go-to-market or how you position the organization. I don't think that has necessarily changed as an important thing for an organization or certainly a marketing function to think about. It's effectively, connecting with your buyers, connecting your brand with your buyer, being very clear about the products and services that you have and enabling them to get access to it and then trying to repeat and scale that as much as possible, which I think is marketing, right? I think what AI has done and agentic is that actually it's just accelerated a bunch of stuff in that process. So you can actually, speed to market or connecting and hyper-personalization becomes, easier for brands to actually operate. But I think actually it's more about the opportunity is probably goes into a conversation around like relatability, which is how I think of buyability. Like, do people actually relate to what you're like trying to position or what they're trying to buy? And then I think to your point, like experience then comes into that because in theory, like everybody will be kind of doing the same things pretty quickly. So like, how do you actually make your products and services relate to your buyer? And that goes to storytelling, that goes to creativity, that goes to like human and AI working together, humans bringing the empathy to that. So I think like when I think about buyability, the actual opportunity is actually how do you use AI and the human spirit, if you like, to create much more relatable stories and create your brand that's much more relatable to the buyers. And then I think there is going to be this big conversation around and you touched on it, like there's just going to be everybody's doing similar things. So then what do you differentiate on? I think one of the battlegrounds for differentiation will be experience. Can you have a more connected experience, a better experience? Can you think more thoughtfully about your experience for your buyers when they interact with your website, or when they touch one of your products, or when they meet some of your salespeople, or whatever it might be? I think you will end up, thinking about buyability will very quickly skew into like, well, what is the actual experience that I remember with this organization or this brand? And that can be kind of interesting. That makes you think really differently. I think you have to sort of, we used to talk a lot about total experience actually, in terms of how do you think all the way through your different touch points with your organization. I think in the world of AI and where we're going, it becomes probably one of the battlegrounds for differentiation for brands that win. To your kind of question at the beginning, I think AI has to kind of help create a consistent experience for brands.
And at Genpact, you've just relaunched your brand. On it is the new proposition. It's all about driving business transformation using AI at its core, right?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think On It is a really good example of that relatability, because what we think it's done is connected, it's not just a brand tagline or anything like that. I think what it's done is connected our brand and our capabilities and our culture into one kind of organizing idea or organizing principle around the tagline. So I think we feel that can be quite exciting to drive an experience and a consistency with the organization. But we did think hard about that in terms of it has to do more than just be a kind of, the front of the brand. We are trying to get that connection and that relatability to our buyers in terms of, does it position does it give them access to our products and our capabilities, but does it also talk to the people inside of our organization, the culture of our organization? So we feel pretty good about that, and hopefully you guys see more of it in the market pretty soon.
It looks great.
Thank you.
Experience is a good segue actually. So another episode of Beyond the Index is all about experience being a differentiator. So you make a very valid point. So and Alex, on that topic of buyability, are there any other brands that you see as doing a really good job at demonstrating their buyability?
Yeah, for sure. But just quickly on that, you were speaking all my language there. So total experience, and I think on the AI efficiency versus experience, what's happened is these models have come out, everyone's locked into efficiency, but efficiency leads to a sea of sameness, right, when it comes to experiences, and we have very short attention spans. And for me, storytelling and experiences are the things that are going to kind of differentiate brands in the future. So we're perfectly aligned, which is great. In terms of brands, I think I'm quite interested in Canva. They're going for a transition in terms of a business that was more focused on kind of one-to-one sales. They're now moving into the B2B space, and their whole proposition is around, they call it kind of B2H, business to human. So how do they try to take that approach and scale it up in a B2B world? And I like what they're doing with a lot of their comms, and they're investing a lot in, because they're still a fairly new business, they're investing a lot in AI to get them to where they need to get to in the B2B world. So I like what they're doing. I think taking to from B2C, on running, as the trainers, no investment, no investment in them, no investment, no.
Get a sponsor for this episode.
But they're doing interesting things with AI in terms of how they scale their business, but also they're thinking about the next operating system for the web, and that will be AI powered, what that looks like, and how that's going to enable them to build better, more personalized experiences for their customers. So for me, they're doing a decent job. I think for me, the interesting thing, you mentioned brands, I think the relationship between agency and brands is going to change over the coming years, in terms of, if I'm a brand now thinking, how do I bring certain things in-house, AI capabilities, versus work with my agency and what can they deliver and do. So I think it's kind of a race now from an agency perspective to get upskilled in these AI tools, understand how AI can help kind of across the funnel, and then be that strategic partner to brands. Mm-hmm. So I think that's an interesting thing that's going to shift as well over the coming years. But to answer your question, Rob, I'm a big fan of what Canva are doing, and the B2C side. I think On are doing some interesting things when it comes to thinking about the web, how that's evolving, and their role within that space to sell more products.
I was chatting to someone this morning about the sort of parallel track of two things that are going on. In some respects, building a brand has exactly the same cues as it always has done. Like, you've got to be trusted, you've got to be known, you've got to be relevant. But the way that you build that brand nowadays is through different modern tactics. And I think not gravitating towards the second in the absence of the first, I think, is really, really important. And actually in the Superpowers Index this year that's launching now, we really unpack trust, because trust is just an outcome. It's not, we all talk about trust, but what it is an outcome of something, and we're able to really specifically unpack it. So the three things that drive trust are brand reach, so effectively being awareness and are you known, brand relevance, like obviously am I engaged, is it right for me, and then interestingly brand reassurance. You think whether you're buying toothpaste or software, you still need to be assured that you're making the right decision. And we break down the purchase decision into what we call decision drivers. So we analyse, well, I think it's 30 decision drivers, and we rank them all. And interestingly, this year, the one that's had the biggest shift in importance is about ease and integration with my business, which has gone from 16th to the second most important reason why people are buying products and services. And I think that's all around, like, if you're going to build a brand in today's world, you've got to have those kind of things within it. But trust and brand safety are really, really important. But yeah, definitely parallel tracking those two things nowadays is really important.
Yeah, and the tools and the tech is there. So it's not a question of technology isn't quite there yet. It's just how a brand sets up, it's politics, it's all these human factors that come into it that means that we can't leverage these tools in the right way and to the scale they should be used. And how that plays out is going to be really interesting. There's going to be some brands that are really progressive and maybe crash and burn, other brands a bit more cautious, and like it's a really interesting puzzle that every brand's got to make over the next kind of 5 to 10 years, which is kind of exciting in a way.
So Neil, on that, obviously Genpact have just relaunched the brand. Like, what's the sort of the genesis of the things that you wanted to stay core to in, obviously the historical legacy of the Genpact brand, the new kind of modern version of it? What were the values that you kept from old world to new world?
Well, I think a lot of it is actually making sure that our audience understands, like, we are actually hyper relevant in today's world of agentic solutions and advanced tech. There's something that I think Genpact has got a really strong story around, but maybe not necessarily well known for it. So a big part of what we need to continue to do is be clear with our market, make sure viability is there, access to the audience is there, they understand what Genpact does. So I think we're actually launching a number of new agentic products to the market, which go into our kind of traditional buying areas within. We're very strong in areas of data and process, but a lot of it is actually is probably the ongoing, to your point about relevance, the relevant face of Genpact for the AI and agentic world. So it's not necessarily a recreation of anything at Genpact. We feel actually some of the raw foundations and the raw materials are what we've always been very strong at, which is around areas around data and process intelligence. We actually think that they are the raw materials for how to be successful with implementing AI and making the most of the AI opportunity. So some of it really is actually just making sure that our audience understands that we have these kind of advanced tech and agentic capabilities. In terms of the positioning and the markets that we're in, actually we feel that our current client base and the traditional areas of our expertise around data and around process intelligence becomes they are the sort of the things that AI loves, if you like. You need to attach it to data and strong data and have organizations that understand your data and have been running your data. And arguably for agentic, it really works well in workflows or where organizations have processes that you can attach to it and optimize it and improve it. So they are really at its heart what we've always done for our clients. So we actually feel really excited about the opportunity around agentic and around AI. On it, I think, becomes a manifestation of that in terms of sort of the exciting opportunity for the company and for the market.
Great.
Does that make sense?
Very much so. Hey, look, the topic today is all about winning the race to AI maturity, and Dentsu B2B, and I think as a collection of people, we always love sort of looking towards the future a bit. Last year, we made a prediction that by 2030, a third of all B2B transactions will be done, online transactions will be done machine to machine, which is actually quite staggering. If you look at the value that's created, that's 8 trillion, not billion, to $8 trillion worth of value that will be by 2030 going from a machine to a machine. And that's just huge, like no human intervention, automating the processes, just huge value. So with that in mind, Alex, like if that is really coming down the line, what advice have you got for brands to make sure they're ready for this kind of commerce in the future?
Good question, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm glad you went there first.
Everyone talks about test and learn, and a big part of what we do in lab is prototyping new tech, right? So, but finding a solid business case to prototype that around. I think with agentic, you can start in so many different areas, right? It could be, I was speaking to someone the other day in procurement, and they're saying, well, if our procurement team essentially is a buying agent, you don't need to send us a PDF now, you need to send us a data feed for that buying agent to understand, to process versus other competitors, for example, right? So this whole space is changing. So for me, I'd say there's so many use cases. What's that low-hanging fruit? What's the business value you can drive? Build a solid business case, go out and do it. Lean on partners in the space, because there's so many partners that want to do things and PR it. So go to a partner and say, hey, we want to do this, but we want you to chip in half. Like, be savvy in that way, and then actually just start doing things. I think the thing at the moment is the market is saturated with AI this, AI that. I think you just need to roll your sleeves up and start somewhere and learn by doing. That's an important thing. For me, on the agentic side, it's really interesting around things like identity. So if you've got agents talking to other agents and across the web, each agent has to have a passport essentially, right? Because they're operating on your behalf. And then you get into the point of, okay, from a marketing perspective, we're a media agency, right? First and foremost, how are you're not advertising to people anymore, you're advertising to agents because they're making the decisions. So it's a really complex challenge, but my advice to brands would be start somewhere, invest, be savvy with that investment, have a tight business case around it, and then move forward from there. And obviously certain companies are small companies, big companies, certain companies have their own internal teams that are looking at this. But I think it is a collaborative, academia, agencies like ours, brands, tech partners all working together to solve some of these challenges. But that's why it's exciting.
You've got to start somewhere, haven't you?
You've got to start somewhere.
If you overplay it too much,
if you
then
overthink
you never move anywhere. Yeah.
If you overthink it, you're not gonna. And the kind of the great thing in this space a little bit is that you can try something, and you'll get the learnings from that. But by the time you finished it, the things have moved on.
Yeah.
But they've moved on for everyone, so that's okay. But it's difficult, particularly in this market, in this economic climate. It's difficult to land that message when people are kind of scurrying around focused on this thing here, and we're like, if you don't get ahead of this, it's going to, pardon my language, bite you in the arse in the future. We can cut that out if that's inappropriate.
No, very appropriate, absolutely fine. I think that's a media term, isn't it? So we can put it in an acronym. It's mind-blowing, but equally things are happening at pace, so getting involved in it is really important. So, hey Neil, you and I have talked a lot about sort of everything from the wild optimism of AI to the hugely dystopian and everything in between. So if we're talking like commerce and AI and all the things that are going there, what other things are going on in your world around this kind of massive movement that you think that people all should be having to think about?
Well, I think you touched on it there. It can get quite overwhelming, I think, in terms of so therefore and I don't think there's any right answer. So you just have to kind of start somewhere in terms of how you're thinking about operating your team and your resources in this world. We spend a lot of time now looking at our operating model. Is it fit for the future, if you like, from a marketing standpoint? And while we're in the professional services industry, if you like, I know a lot of my peers are having the same conversation in terms of the marketing function that we had, a year ago or 2 years ago. It's not necessarily in the right shape or fit for the future in terms of just some of the progress that's been made with some of the technology now that's out there. So then how do you start thinking about, well, actually, how do you bring agentic marketing into your team, into your skill set? How do you start, creating content that's as much for a machine than it is for a person? So it's kind of, I do think you have to, it makes you think really hard actually about just, is that workflow going to exist anymore? Do we need to do that? What talent profile do we need? I do think, but then I think there's no perfect answer for it. So it's almost in a funny way. There's, you just got to get started because you're not going to be perfectly right. So you might as well get going. And as long as you've got, a good understanding of that internally in terms of the type of marketing model that you want and the design principles around it, and the agentic or AI is going to be a key part of it, is to get going and then learn from it. I do think, you touched on it a bit. I do think there's going to be this thing around the types of people and marketers, certainly in B2B marketing, is going to be much more around orchestration of multiple things, where versus that somebody maybe being a specialist in one area. I think that the technique or the skill set to enable people to orchestrate not just the traditional work, but actually agents or whatever it may be is going to be what we need to probably profile for or design for. So that's kind of, like you said, there's a massive ecosystem around you. How do you start to think about marketing moving from like automated marketing to autonomous marketing? How do you think about your people as orchestrators of several things versus specialisms, or and you'd include the technology and the agents within that. So it's it makes your head hurt a little bit in terms of where it could get to, but I think actually it's a really exciting time to be in organizations that are thinking about it, are trying to sort of sell it to their customers at the same time in terms of agentic products, but also bringing it into marketing is it's just going to be an interesting ride, I think, the next sort of 18, 24 months.
And you're in charge of global markets, are you thinking about it, like, because obviously there's change management in there as well as different shapes of teams and formations of the skill set and talent. Are you initially thinking about it as just a broad plan that you might apply differently market by market, or are you immediately thinking it might be different in one country versus another? What's your take on that?
It's a good question. Not even down to that level, I think. I think we talked about it in terms of like big design strokes. I think we have to think about, you always think about your audience and their buying behaviours. To your sort of first question, are we in the right shape to deliver to that? We have a very clear company strategy in terms of where we want to go as an advanced tech and agentic solutions leader. That comes into it. What's the type of marketing function we need to be to deliver to that? And then you think about the technology and the platforms, themselves, in terms of, do we have that skill sets? Do we have people who understand how to orchestrate those things? So some of it for us is actually about, are we being as close to the business as possible, being kind of frictionless in how we deliver to the markets and support the business, being as simple internally in terms of getting out into the market and having the right talent and tool set internally to deliver at speed and scale into the market. A big thing for us is actually, like everybody, it's a really competitive time. I think to your question, there'll be some winners and losers in the market. As a marketing function, we need to be as aligned to the business as possible, as fast as possible, as agile as possible in terms of how we operate and deliver to the business. So we think through that lens really in terms of what's the workflows we need, what's the shape of the team we need, what's the talent profile that we need internally, and we're moving now quite quickly towards a fairly new operating model. But we know that along the way there's going to be you're going to need to train people a bunch. You're going to need to reimagine things. It's going to be, there'll be some setbacks and that type of thing. But I think, like to your point, you just have to get going with it. So it's more so on the bigger design principles of actually where you want to sort of meet the market, or how you have to drive your brand into the market. And it's a good question in terms of getting down into regional tailoring of it. Probably phase
Alex and
five.
I, at Dentsu, my favourite word is interoperability. This idea that, in the agility that you need now to move quickly, then why can you not be modular? So specifically, we're doing all these partnerships with really interesting people and companies to plug and play in our capability. So we're partnering with a synthetic audience business right now who can plug and play around. We do media audiences, activate those audiences in media. We're working with people the way that we buy media platforms in a different way, and even with content and creativity, like the way that we're able to work with, again, big tech companies and some of our platforms around optimizing content, changing content on the fly. So this, I think, the ecosystem is so broad now. We're working with people to help augment that, to move our clients' businesses forward even faster, rather than worry about, Christ, we have to do all of this ourselves. So interoperability is the word of the day. But I actually really like it because it's quite a galvanizing permission statement to go and find other people who can help and plug you in. I think so.
Yeah, it's important, like from an innovation perspective, like the whole T-shaped people. Is that the expression? Yeah. That's important for us, right? To be commercial, creative, tech focused. Having those different hats that you can put on. I think that's been really important across agencies and brands going forward.
Yeah, interesting time.
Interesting time. Well, on that point of optimism rather than dystopian, I'll thank you very much, Alex. Thanks, Neil, for giving us your views today. It's been great chatting to you. Some fantastic takeaways on our episode of Beyond the Index today. We've shown you, hopefully, that if you can win the race to AI maturity, you will win with some practical sound bites from some of the experts in our field. If you'd like to find out any more, please check out the link in the show notes, and we'll see you next time on Beyond the Index.